Yo, holy fuck. Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to a new video. I hope everybody's having a phenomenal day. Recently, it came out that the Saints had traded picks with the Eagles, so I thought that was reason enough to make a mock draft. Plus, I'm pretty deep in my prospect rankings at this point. If you guys want to read through any of these, you can pause the video and go ahead. These are my notes for the first 30 or so players, in my opinion, in the draft class. I have, to this point, I have scouted exactly 70 players. Kind of from all over the draft, honestly. A lot of players I like, a lot of players I don't like. I might make an in-depth video about this in particular. For example, there's some players that I'm not really high on. I'm not very high on Malik Willis. I'm not very high on a lot of the quarterbacks. I'm not very high on Chris Olave compared to some people. I'm pretty high on George Pickens compared to some people. I'm very high on Trey McBride. Not so high on Jordan Davis compared to a lot of people. Very high on George Karlaftis. Very low on Trayvon Walker compared to some people. And as you can see in my top 10, there's some interesting players here, like a center, a guard, 2 tackles. A lot going on here. Devin Lloyd is probably not in a lot of people's top 10. I have him as the third guy. That's the amazing thing about doing stuff like this, though. So, certainly didn't expect Devin Lloyd to be the third player on my board or Kenyon Green to be fourth, but that's just kind of how it ended up when I started watching tape. I don't know. Anyways, new mock draft. Again, I'm trying to do this partially on what I think will happen and partially on what the trend is right now with what people think. I'm going to go Aiden Hutchinson first, though. I've been a proponent of that, and I think it's probably the best bet here. There are currently reports that Kayvon Thibodeau might fall due to character concerns, and there's currently a lot of belief that Kyle Hamilton will also fall, just because some of the flaws of his game is being seen. I'm also not incredibly high on Kyle Hamilton. I have him, 8th? 6th. So not top. A lot of people say that he's the best player in the draft. He's not. You can't even compare him to some of these guys. But he's definitely, in my opinion, top 10. But he's not the generational safety talent that I thought he would be when I started watching tape. At 2, I think the consensus right now at 2 is Trayvon Walker. I don't think it should be. I'm still going to give this to Kayvon. He's the second player on my board. I think he goes second. That being said, though, at 3rd with the Texans, I do think this is where they take Trayvon Walker. Trayvon Walker is a freak of nature. You're not going to find a better, in the way of athleticism and size, you're not going to find anybody better than Trayvon Walker. But at the same time, he's kind of raw, honestly. He's not overly developed at what he does. He's not very good as a pass rusher, which is huge. Hasn't really seen double teams that much. It's really hard to see. I don't think he's the best player out of Georgia on that defense. I think Jermaine Johnson is better than him personally. But a lot of people are saying that you could even see Trayvon Walker go first overall. So I think it wouldn't surprise me to see these 3 edges go top 3. Kayvon might honestly slide down the board. I just really don't think he should. And out of a principle thing, I think I have to take him off of the board as second. Now, sitting at 4, the Jets. Obviously, I don't think Jermaine Johnson is in play here. I don't truly think that they need tackle that badly. I think you could see Kyle Hamilton go in a spot like this. I even think, as a dark horse pick, I wouldn't be overly shocked to see Sauce Gardner go 4th overall. I'm going to go with Ikem Ekwonu. I'm not overly high on him, honestly. He's not very high on my board. I think I have him as the 3rd ranked tackle in this class. But he can play guard, which is the big thing. You can shift him wherever you want. He's versatile. He could potentially be a really, really good player. I don't think he's as sound as a lot of other people think he is. I think he'll probably end up being the first tackle off the board, though, because of the versatility. And I'm trying to think of what teams are actually going to do and not my opinion on players. That being said, at 5, I want the Giants to take Evan Neal. Tackle number 2 on my board. I think Charles Cross, honestly, is the best tackle in this class on tape. I think Evan Neal has a higher ceiling, though. And Evan Neal's really good. He is. Him and Charles Cross are neck and neck. I think Ikem is considerably under them, but I think Evan Neal should definitely be a top 5 player. Then at 6, I'm still a proponent of this definitely being a quarterback. It's kind of a coin flip for me on Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett. I'm still going to go with Kenny Pickett. The Panthers, truthfully, aren't the worst team in the league. They started out really good last year. I don't think that they're really a bad team. Malik Willis is more of a project. Kenny Pickett is the closest you're going to get to a day one ready quarterback in this class by quite a bit. He's a lot more pro ready than Malik Willis is. There's no chance in hell that Malik Willis is ready to walk in and play day one. Kenny Pickett probably isn't either, but he's a lot closer than Malik Willis is. At 7 with the Giants, I've kind of flip-flopped on this one. I think that it could be where we see Kyle Hamilton go. But that's not what I have them doing. I have them going with Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. Jermaine Johnson, absolute stud. I have him as edge 3 in the class behind Aiden and Kayvon, who I have at 1 and 2. Jermaine Johnson is a freak athlete who's an amazing pass rusher, my bad. And I think it wouldn't surprise me to see the Giants go edge here. This could be, the only other thing that I think is even in play for them is Kyle Hamilton. And I don't think that they necessarily need to take a safety here. They pick again in the second round. There's a solid chance that they could be in a place to get one of these 4 safeties here that are all great. I think all 3, Hill, Brisker, and Cine, should all be first round graded players. I don't think they'll all go in the first round, obviously, but I think you don't need to take a safety here. The same could be said about edges, kind of. You could find yourself in a place where you could take Karlaftis or Hall or Ebiketie, or Boyamafe, or even David Ajabo if you want to take a chance on a guy. But I think Jermaine Johnson here makes the most sense. Now, at 8, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Falcons take Malik Willis. It really wouldn't. But I think the Falcons, they have so many other needs, and I think their biggest need by far is wide receiver. I think if the Falcons at 8 are in a spot where they can take the top wide receiver off the board, I think they do it. I'm going to take Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State off the board as the first wide receiver. Teams are really high on Garrett Wilson. I like Garrett Wilson a lot. He is wide receiver 3 on my board, behind Drake London and Jameson Williams. But Garrett Wilson also doesn't have the injury concerns that Jameson Williams has. Falcons need a wide receiver desperately. I think Garrett Wilson's probably the first one to go in this class. Teams love Garrett Wilson. The reports are saying that there's no way he falls out of the top 10. I've seen him even go as early as 4 to the Jets. So teams love him. I think 8 makes sense. At 9 with the Seahawks, I've also thought a lot about Malik Willis. I just don't think that they do. They could. Wouldn't be surprised. The reports also say that they have done their homework on Charles Cross. They like Charles Cross a lot. I love Charles Cross. He's tackle number 1 in my class. And I think it's either a tackle, quarterback, or an edge. I think they need all 3 equally. I think you can afford to wait a year. I really do. I don't know if you want to take a chance on Malik Willis when you have what could be a surefire plug-and-play tackle in Charles Cross. So I think Charles Cross comes off the board at 9. I'm really hesitant because the thing with Malik Willis is he could go anywhere from, I've seen him at 2nd. He could go anywhere from 2nd to 16th, I think is his range. Or even farther. He could fall. Wouldn't surprise me. It would because quarterbacks are overvalued. Not overvalued, but it's obviously the most important position in football. I just don't think the Falcons are they could surprise us, but it doesn't feel to me that either of them are looking to draft a quarterback with their first pick. Now, the Jets, their second pick in the draft, took a tackle off the board already. I think realistically, this is probably where we see Kyle Hamilton go, if he's on the board at 10. Again, he's 6th on my board. I'm not going to have them take him here, though. I have Sauce Gardner as a top 5 player in this class, and I think the Jets probably favor him a little bit. The reports are saying that Ahmed will not escape the top 10 and that Kyle Hamilton is going to drop. And I'm just going to play into that. I'm sure that Washington will be upset about that, but not too upset. I think they go wide receiver here. I think this is Drake London. I think they need it. Their wide receiver core was banged up due to injury. Terry McLaurin's great. They're lacking a big jump ball receiver, though, and I think Drake London fits that need at a position that they do admittedly need. They don't really have a third wide receiver that's great, and I think Drake London could fill that. Plus, again, injury concerns at wide receiver have been an issue for Washington, plus contracts are running out. At 12, Kyle Hamilton, if he's around. It's a no-brainer. Kyle Hamilton could be amazing. I think he's mainly falling. He's falling due to a lot of things. He can't really cover slot wide receivers. He's not the generational safety prospect that a lot of people thought. And if you're a safety that's going to go in the top 10, you kind of have to be. Safeties fall in the draft constantly. And I think 12th is what makes sense for Kyle Hamilton. Some of the best safeties in recent memory didn't find their way into the top 15 like Minkah Fitzpatrick. So I think 12th makes sense to the Vikings. At 13, you have a Texans team that has already gone an edge. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they took a chance on Malik Willis at 13. That being said, I don't have them doing that. I'm going to have them take Derek Stingley out of LSU. The interesting thing about Derek Stingley is if he had played like his freshman tape did, he'd be a top 5 pick probably. But his sophomore and junior season, he kind of regressed. For him, it's kind of an effort thing. He doesn't seem to play as hard as he can, but when he does, he's amazing. He could potentially be one of the best corners that we've seen in the draft. It really comes down to his motivation to do that and if he can play as good as he did his freshman year in college. After his freshman year, everybody thought he was going to be the best player in football, and he just wasn't. But again, I think taking a chance on him at 13 makes sense, especially if you're a Texans team that admittedly isn't going to be good next year, and you know that. You can take a chance on a guy that you need to develop more, you know? At 14, the Ravens, you could take Jordan Davis here. It wouldn't be overly shocking to me if they did go with a guy like Jordan Davis. I don't really think that you can take a chance on an edge rusher right here. George Karlaftis is nice. I like George Karlaftis. I also really like Ebiketie. But I don't think at 14 either of those really makes sense. This could be where you see a guy like Andrew Booth go. Or even Trent McDuffie. Both of those would make sense to me. Again, Jordan Davis. Who really knows where Jordan Davis is going to fall? I think this is probably the beginning of his range here at 14. He's another guy that's kind of a boomer bust player. I don't think he goes here, though. I really don't. I'm actually going to give them Kenyon Green. Guard out of Texas A&M. He's the fourth player on my board. I think they could look to upgrade the offensive line that admittedly was not good last year. You can move Kenyon Green anywhere that you really want. I think he could even play a tackle if you absolutely needed him to. I like Kenyon Green a lot. I think he's probably the most well-rounded blocker in the entire class. He doesn't really have a weakness blocking-wise. I know he struggles sometimes with like picking up blitzes and stuff like that. A little bit weaker as a run blocker. But I think as a day one starting guard, getting him at 14, guards fall all the time. Guard centers always fall in the draft. But I think 14, getting the best tackle in the class, or the best guard in the class, potentially one of the best players in the draft. Even if he's not at the biggest position of need or the most valued position, I think 14 makes a lot of sense for Kenyon Green. Now we get to the part of the trade. Here at 15, this is a pretty easy one for me. I think they take Jameson Williams. Arguably the best wide receiver in the class. He was wide receiver 1 for me for a while. I just don't think you can justify it with his injury concerns. Obviously, he blew out his ACL 2 months ago. I don't think you can really justify him being wide receiver 1 or even being the first or second wide receiver off the board. A lot of people say that he's going to even fall out of the first round, which would be amazing for teams that want him in the second round, because he could potentially be not only a wide receiver 1, but a Pro Bowl wide receiver 1. He could be a top 10 wide receiver in the league. I think you could say the same about the other two taken before him, though, honestly. I really like Drake London. He's wide receiver 1 for me. But Jameson Williams, probably the most well-polished. He's a freak athlete, too. I think the Eagles have really been looking for that long ball threat, and they haven't quite been able to get it. And I think Jameson Williams could be that for them. And I think it makes sense to take him at 15 because if he was around at 16, I think the Saints jump on it, honestly. Since he's not around at 16, though, I think if Malik Willis is on the board, this is about the end of his range. I think the Saints take him if he's around. I do know they got Jameis Winston back on a 2-year deal. Malik Willis isn't day one ready anyways. We all know that. So you can take him in, sit him behind Jameis, let him develop. I think it's the perfect spot for him to be in over in New Orleans. They do have Andy Dalton, but obviously that's not a contributing factor. Andy Dalton's on a 1-year deal, and you can get rid of him after that, so it's not really a big issue. Now, if you're the Chargers here, this could be where you see Jordan Davis go. I don't think it is, personally. I think that the need at tackle is too much. I think they take Trevor Penning here. I'm not overly high on Trevor Penning, admittedly, at all. Trevor Penning's pretty low on my board. But teams do genuinely really like Trevor. He's really agile as a blocker. He's kind of raw. I think he needs to develop a ton. But the potential, the size, everything that you need in a tackle is there. And everything that he doesn't have is stuff that you can teach. He has all the intangibles to play tackle the next level. It's just the development that needs to go into it. And I think the Chargers are the perfect place to take a chance on him, especially given that their O-line is not good. Now, sitting at 18, you have the Eagles again. After taking a wide receiver, this could be Andrew Booth, I think. Admittedly, in my mock-up for this, Andrew Booth is one of the 2 players that I haven't watched tape on yet. But I know a lot of teams are very high on Andrew Booth. I think it might be a size thing with him more than anything on why he would fall. And if he's available at 18, I think it's a good option for them. I also think that this could be George Karlaftis or Arnold Ebiketie. Originally, I had them taking Ebiketie, but I think the value of Andrew Booth at this spot potentially is too much for the Eagles to pass up on. Especially when there's a lot of questions on the secondary for the Eagles. A potential day one starter, I think you can't go wrong taking Andrew Booth at 18. At 19, I don't think the Saints should even really think about this. I think Chris Olave makes the most sense. I think the best wide receiver on the board is probably Treylon Burks and Jahan Dotson. I'm not super high on Olave, but a lot of people are. And there's a lot of reasons to be. He's a good deep threat kind of guy. A little bit on the thinner side. A lot of teams really like Chris Olave, and I don't really see him escape. I think he doesn't escape the top 20 regardless. The Saints need him. I don't know. Michael Thomas's timeline's kind of questionable. Who knows how good he's going to be once he comes back anyways. They don't really have solid options past that. Michael Thomas's absence was definitely felt last year. That's what makes the most sense to me, though, is Chris Olave. Now, going to the Steelers. They could really go a lot of ways here. It wouldn't truly surprise me to see them go with Matt Corral. I think he's the best quarterback on the board. I am not high at all on Desmond Ridder. He doesn't interest me at all as a prospect. I think he's like 60th on my board. There are a lot of issues with Desmond Ridder. I would be upset as a Steelers fan if they took Desmond Ridder. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see them go safety. Daxton Hill is still on the board. I think Daxton Hill is an option here. The Steelers have said that they're going to sign a free safety, though. I don't think they need to go interior. Corner. Originally, this is where I had Andrew Booth going, so now I actually have to think about it. It wouldn't surprise me that much to see the Steelers go with Jordan Davis. They lost Tyson Alualu, or Alu. And Jordan Davis could be that replacement. Wouldn't surprise me. I know they like Jordan Davis. I just don't think I can justify it. At this spot, I'm going to give them Trent McDuffie out of Washington. They need corner help pretty desperately over there. They lost Joe Hayden. Outside of Nkella Witherspoon, who naturally plays a safety position anyways and is kind of more of a box guy, they don't really have anything going at corner. And I think it's probably their biggest position of need, and I think it's what they should address first. Now going to the Patriots. This could be where Kaiir Elam goes. It could be. I don't think it is. I wouldn't be surprised either to see them end up with Jahan Dotson, Treylon Burks, Daxton Hill even. But I'm going to have them go with Devin Lloyd. I don't think it's the biggest position of need for them. The Patriots love sizable linebackers. I think Devin Lloyd is 6'3", 6'4", playing off-ball linebacker. He is third on my board for a reason. It's just none of the teams before this really have any need at linebacker that they can reasonably address before other positions. And I think the Patriots find them in a position where they could do that. And I think they should do that. I think Devin Lloyd might be the steal of the draft because I really do think he's probably going to go in the latter half of the first round or maybe even fall out of the first round. It would be unjustifiable if he did because he's probably my favorite player in the draft this year. And I think the Patriots get him at 21, and they should be pleased. Now, the Packers. The Packers pick twice. They have 22 and 28. I think reasonably in those two picks, you have to go wide receiver at some point. And I think they look to address that first. I think it's Jahan Dotson. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks is great. But I'm going to go with Jahan Dotson coming off the board before Treylon. Obviously, I think it's by far the biggest need for them given the Devontae Adams trade. And it's probably the first thing that they look to address. Now the Cardinals. I think I had the Cardinals taking Trent McDuffie, who's off the board now. So where do they go? I mean, this could be Treylon Burks to the Cardinals. I wouldn't really be surprised. They have a huge need at corner, though. So what do they look to do? It wouldn't surprise me to see George Karlaftis or Arnold Ebiketie come off the board, or Boya Mafe. But I think the need at corner for the Cardinals is just too big. It's by far their biggest need. I'm going to go with Kaiir Elam, who's actually the second of the first-round draft pick players that I have not scouted yet, so that's on me. From what I understand, though, people are really high on Kaiir Elam. The main issue with him is injury history. So with those players, it's impossible to predict the injury history players because they tend to fall very far in the draft. I mean, look at a guy like DK Metcalf that fell to the last pick in the second round. He wasn't picked due to injury concerns, even though he was seen as a top 15 player in that draft class before the draft. So you never really know with these players. But I think 23 makes sense. I had them taking a similar player last year, actually. God, who did I have them drafting? He went to the Packers. I don't know. I'm stupid. I'm honestly dumb. That name's escaping me with all these other names that I'm trying to remember here. But Kaiir Elam could be a plug-and-play day-one starter, especially given what the Cardinals have there already. And I think it should be a no-brainer there. I don't think that they can really justifiably go elsewhere. Now at 24. Again, I think that if you're the Cowboys here, you have a lot of options. They could go Treylon Burks. I don't think that they do. They could go George Karlaftis, Arnold Ebiketie, Boya Mafe. I don't think that they do. Even Cameron Thomas could find his way into the first round. I'm going to have them take Daxton Hill off the board, though. Second safety off the board, probably, I think I have him as a top 20 player in the draft. He should definitely go in the first round, and I think it makes the most sense. I think Dallas makes sense. It's a position of need. I think he's better than what they have there already. Kind of more of a box guy, but I think 24 is probably about the range where I think he should go. Wouldn't surprise me to see Daxton Hill fall, though, just given the positional value. Now, if you're the Bills, I will say this is about the start of where I think that there's a very off chance that we see Kenneth Walker slip into the first round. I don't think he will, but it's something to be aware of potentially happening. Here, I've gone back and forth. I think originally I had them taking Tyler Linderbaum, the center out of Iowa. I don't think that they do, especially if Treylon Burks is on the board. I think that they solidify the wide receiver position by taking Treylon Burks. Cole Beasley's not around. You need to replace Cole Beasley. Treylon Burks is projected as a potential wide receiver 1 at the next level. He's kind of the last one, too. He's kind of the last one on this board that I think is potentially graded as a wide receiver 1 at the next level. That's the thing with Chris Olave, too. He's not projected as a wide receiver 1. He's kind of more of a deep threat gadget kind of guy. But he's really good in that role. So, I'm high on George Pickens. I'm high on Calvin Austin. I like John Mechie and Sky Moore. But I don't think any of them reasonably compare to the wide receivers taken before him. The Titans, they could look to just take George Pickens off the board. At this spot, though, I think you have to take the best player on the board, which, in my opinion, they could look to take a tackle, but I don't think any of these guys are worth a pick at all. I really don't. This could be Roger McCreary, I guess. This could even be where we see Trey McBride go, even though he's probably a second-round kind of guy. I think you could reasonably see George Pickens here. I really do. For me, it's between George Pickens or Nakobe Dean. I love Nakobe Dean. I think he's amazing. I think he's way better than probably anybody else that's left on the board right here. But I just think the wide receivers can't look to go anywhere other than wide receiver. Or the Titans can't look to go anywhere other than wide receiver. And I think George Pickens is the best wide receiver on the board out of Georgia. So I think they look to do that, even though if I was drafting for them, it'd be Nakobe Dean. Because I think Nakobe Dean is phenomenal. At 27 here, wouldn't surprise me to see another guy like Sky Moore or Calvin Austin come off the board. Or Lewis Cine or Jaquan Brisker. I have them, however, taking Tyler Linderbaum. Top 10 player in the draft for me. He's a center. He projects pretty well at guard. You can move him around, get some O-line help for the Bucs, and I think they need it. Even if they don't, I think they do, but obviously, depth at the O-line position is so necessary, and teams usually don't have it, especially with the Buccaneers, who got kind of banged up last year. Regardless of what you have at the position, securing the offensive line is huge, especially if you have Tom Brady back, who does not move in the pocket too well at his current state. I think Tyler Linderbaum's a day one starter, and I think he's a potential all-pro kind of guy. The big thing with Tyler Linderbaum is his size at the next level. It doesn't really project insanely well. But I think he's worth probably a top 15 selection. Centers don't typically go this high in the draft. They typically fall. And I kind of kept that in mind when I was drafting. No other team has a huge need at the position, really, even though I think he's worth a pick way higher than this. At 28, I'm not even going to really think about this. Actually, I will think about this. Damn it. This could be... Yeah, I'm going to do that. Realistically, I think this should be George Karlaftis or Arnold Ebiketie. But I think this is Jordan Davis. Especially because you can move him to the edge if you want to. That's why I think he could go a lot higher than this. I'm not insanely high on Jordan Davis. I think he's like 25th on my board. he is, from a size, speed, athleticism perspective, probably the best we've ever seen. He does not play as fast as he did at the combine on tape. He's not great with his hands. He kind of gets bullied on double teams, which, I mean, fair enough. I mean, there's not a whole lot of guys that don't. He's not amazing with his pass moves or anything like that. He's not amazing with his hands. I think technically he's just not sound enough that you'd wish out of a guy of his size, speed, and everything else. It doesn't translate. His combine just doesn't really translate to tape as well as you wish it would. I think you could see him go anywhere really, though, from that 14th spot. He'll be a first-round pick, but anywhere from 14th to the end of the first, really. And here I think 28th makes the most sense, even though I do wish this was Arnold Ebiketie or George Karlaftis. Now at 29, you have to go wide receiver if you're the Chiefs. You have nothing there. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot here either. I think you have to take a chance on a guy like Sky Moore because you can't not go wide receiver at this spot. I think Sky Moore is probably the best guy around. Maybe Calvin Austin. But I think Sky Moore out of Western Michigan is probably the best option here. And then if you have the second pick, I think that this is where we see one of these edge rushers go. I'm actually going to go with Arnold Ebiketie over George Karlaftis. I think Arnold Ebiketie is more sound technically than George Karlaftis is. The big thing with George Karlaftis is his specifically his arm size. He has shorter arms, a lot shorter than almost all edge rushers in the NFL. There's nobody of George Karlaftis' build in the NFL that has found success, which is the big issue. I think he's definitely worth a first-round draft pick, though. But, again, not everybody can be a first-round draft pick. So, only 32 picks. He might fall out of it this time. Now, if you're the Bengals, unfortunately, probably the biggest positions in need for the Bengals just aren't around, right? You can't justify taking a tackle here. This could be Roger McCreary. Wouldn't surprise me. But the Bengals could also take a chance on a guy. Like, they could take Trey McBride. They could take a chance on a high upside kind of guy. I think Zion Johnson makes the most sense. I like him a lot. I think he's definitely worth a pick at 31, a plug-and-play guard. And I think they desperately do need help on the offensive line. I think it's by far the biggest need for the Bengals. And I think Zion Johnson does an amazing job of filling that need. I think he should be a day one starter and projects really well for the Bengals. At 32, I've kind of jumped back and forth between quarterbacks and safeties for this pick. It could be Lewis Cine. Hell, this could even be Nakobe Dean if he's on the board. Wouldn't surprise me at all. However, I kind of still like the idea of the Lions taking a quarterback at 32 if he's around. However, I've changed my mind on it being Desmond Ridder because I really don't like Desmond Ridder as a prospect. However, I do like Matt Corral. I think it's Matt Corral at 32. I think he just projects as a pro quarterback a lot better than Desmond Ridder does. Maybe not as high of a ceiling as Desmond Ridder, but his floor is certainly way higher. And I think in the terms of like giving Jared Goff day one competition, Matt Corral is a lot more pro ready than Desmond Ridder is. And I think that's what makes the most sense to me. The only other thing I could think of is Lewis Cine, but I think it makes more sense for them to go with Matt Corral, in all honesty. Especially since they already picked at the top of the draft, and they got potentially their biggest need out of the way with Kayvon. Anyways, I do think again, the big thing with this draft class is everybody is so close that nobody truly knows the order, which makes it a lot of fun to try to predict. A lot of this went off of what scouts are saying, what executives are saying, what draft analysts are saying, in how teams feel about these players. But there's a lot of interchangeable pieces. Obviously, I think Malik Willis is definitely in play at 6, my bad. They were 8th for most of the year, and then they decided to lose a couple more games. I think Garrett Wilson, I think there's better options, but a lot of this is based off what other people think. A lot of it isn't, though. Like, I know I'm higher on Matt Corral than a lot of other people are. Anyways, I will be making more mock drafts in the future, as you would imagine. I think I'm going to do a big board eventually. Right now I have 70 guys. Like I said, there's still a lot of scouting to get done, though. At some point, I will definitely do a big board. Anyways, I do hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video of whatever I make. Peace.